I got several comments on my underrated for number of Goodreads reviews of people surprised that some of the books were on there, and I think you're gonna have some more of that surprise with this one here too. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be doing part 2 of just crazy underrated books, but this time specifically focusing on the rating. Now, I realized I neglected to mention the other one. I was talking about Goodreads ratings, but I was going on. Those were all under 5,000 ratings. And then now we're going to be doing books that are under a 3.85. Now, 3.85 might not sound particularly low, but for Goodreads at least, that is fairly low just because you're going to have your general fives and your ones anyway. But typically, I think with Goodreads, if you're above a 4, that's considered to be good. If you're below a 4, that's considered to be not so good. And then the further you go down, that's usually either it means it's questionable or very controversial in some ways. And we have a little bit of that in all of these. And I think with some of these it sort of makes sense why some of the ratings are a little bit lower, just because there are books that won't necessarily work for everybody. But this list made me sad because I'm going through again only books that I really enjoyed that I gave a very high rating to. I think these are all 4 or 5 stars. In which case, with some of them too, it might have been ones where they went up later. But all books that I really enjoyed that are on here that have quite low ratings for their averages, and so we're gonna talk through. So starting off number 10 here with a 3.84. This is actually a tie, but we're going to talk about first The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker, and this is at a 3.84 average rating. And this one is not so much a surprise. Now, I had put off reading this book for so long because I was not sure how I was going to feel about this book, about this series. But I just kept hearing from people who know my taste that you really need to try it. And I finally did, and I immensely enjoyed this. And the second book and like the first trilogy as a whole really upped it even from there, but I immensely enjoyed this. However, there are a lot of reasons why Baker is not going to work for everybody. It is very bleak and dark with a lot of the stuff that's happening with the characters. There are really no redeeming qualities to most of the characters, or just the characters aren't really too redeemable. So if you need characters to latch onto, if you don't want to read just uh, dark and bordering getting to like nihilism at points here, and I hear that just continues to grow even more so in the Fallout trilogy. This may just not work for you. I think the writing as well, which is absolutely beautiful, but is also a style that's just not going to work for everyone. So a book in a series that I've immensely enjoyed, but I do get why it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. It's definitely something. It's a beautiful story. Baker is an extremely talented author, and his writing style, the way he writes theme, and what he accomplishes in the books is phenomenal. So if you appreciate those things and you're okay going in knowing what you're getting into, I think it's important knowing what you're getting into. There's a lot to enjoy for sure. So tied with this, also at a 3.4, unfortunately not the only entry on the list here for this author, we have To Ride Hell's Chasm by Janny Wirtz. Now, I had people commented they were surprised at how low the number of ratings were for this, and so I do think, honestly, as more people check this out, I think that the rating will kick up a little bit here, because this is an absolutely phenomenal book. But Janny Wirtz in general is one of, if not my favorite author. It's just I've read every single book that Janny Wirtz has written. I still haven't done the Empire trilogy yet that she did with Feist, but I've read all of her solo published stuff, and I've enjoyed all of her books. And my favorite series with Wars of Light and Shadow, and there's just so much that I love about the way Janny writes, but. Janny's style is unique, and her prose and her writing style is just not going to work for everyone. And To Ride Hell's Chasm is, out of her non-Wars of Light and Shadow books, the one that's written the most in that style too. So I think it's just, if you go into this, and especially if this is the first Janny that you're reading, it does take a little bit of a learning curve, I feel like, to figure out her style and to have it click. And that was for me too, is when I started reading her books. And some of her other stuff, I did start with her stuff that was a little bit different in style, but when she's really going for like that maximum richness in the writing, it can be a little harder to get into. This one I know too, the ending is a little bit I'll be saying that again, but the ending is a little bit controversial as well. I particularly loved it, but I've seen some other people that really hated it or just did not feel that it worked. And Gianni also is she never does the same ending twice, and so sometimes you're gonna get something that's maybe not what you're expecting, and that definitely could have been the case here. I think there's also some other books on the list here where I think it's the ending that really just kind of pulled people or made it controversial there as well. So we'll probably talk about that again as well. But this is really a phenomenal book. It's telling the story of Mikhail, who is a foreigner, and he's dealing with prejudice against him, but he is trying to save the life of a princess who's gone missing, and he, in some ways, is the only person who can. It's deeply character focused. The amount of world building in this standalone is phenomenal as well, and it is just a all around beautiful book that I do highly recommend as well. Coming up to another, because I feel like every one of these is just kind of like a stab in the heart for me, because we're so many things I love here. But next up, then, we do also have a tie at 3.81 average. We're going to talk first about King's Dragon by Kate Elliott. This is another one. This is a top 10 series all time for me. I've been yelling about Crown of Stars for so long and about Kate Elliott in general. And Kate Elliott is another one of my favorite authors. I love this series, and I've read she has a lot of stuff that I still need to get to. It's one of those authors I'm planning to read everything that she's written. I've read, she's still publishing, I think is part of it. She's had a lot of newer stuff that I've been getting to, so I still need to get to the back catalog. But this one, King's Dragon, is the start to Crown of Stars, 7-book series, and it is kind of like a historical fantasy in a way. It's in sort of a parallel Europe, has a lot of feel of historical fiction, is I think one of the most like kind of just realistic, gritty type of medieval things that I have read, with the way it shows a lot of the just day-to-day, everyday, real types of things. It's again, I feel like it's one that sometimes it takes a little bit to click with the style or just the way that it is being written. I think if the people who like historical fiction, I think you'd get a lot out of this series. But also, I mean, for me, I think if you enjoy things like A Song of Ice and Fire, which is a well-known kind of gritty medieval thing with kind of lighter fantasy elements that grow over time, you get that here. And Kate Elliott, especially in her epic fantasy, she writes usually close, deeply character focused, but with expansive world building. And it's that world building that really just pulls me in. Each book in Crown of Stars, you get more of the world building, that you start to expand and see more of the world, and it just goes to levels that you can never see coming in the first book. And so, series that I absolutely loved, and again, very much recommend checking out. So then we have our tie at 381 is Sorcerer's Legacy by Janie Wirtz. I said we'd be seeing Janie again, unfortunately, which again, makes me so sad that her books have just not always found, I think, the right readers in some cases. Now, Sorcerer's Legacy, this was her debut, and I thought this was really strong, although this is sort of stylistically, it is a debut, and I think partially she was still figuring out her style and figuring out where she was going to go and end up with style-wise. So partially there, it just might be, it feels a little bit different, and so that might rub people a little bit the wrong way. I think a big thing here, though, is again, the ending is very controversial for this book for different reasons for Hell's Chasm, but I literally this book just gets a lot darker than you would expect. And I buddy read this with some people in Discord, and some people loved it, and other people were like, I can't even believe what's happened in this book. And just like bounced off of it very hard. I think that sometimes endings can really ruin books for people, and it is bold, and it is not what you would expect at all. And this goes into some interesting directions as well too. I think partially it's just Janie Wirtz explores interesting ideas and does things in sort of her own way. And I think if it clicks for you, it clicks so well. Usually, at least that was my experience. And if it doesn't, it just sometimes isn't going to work. So one of those things that'll happen. This, though, is about a woman who is whisked away from going to end up being killed or worse in her world, and she's whisked to another world and thrown into their political situation and brought over to be the bride of an important royal. But there's a lot more going on, and it's because he's unable to produce an heir, and she is already, at least by just a couple of days, pregnant. And so they're trying to see if they can kind of get that passed off to make it work. But she gets really deeply embroiled into the politics, which are very dangerous in this world, and lots of situations like that. It is, despite being quite short, again, a lot of world building, a lot of interesting stuff, and a lot of types of character focus, and just, yeah, it goes in some unexpected directions for sure, as well. But it's a heck of a read, a heck of a read. All right, so then we're going to 378. This is thankfully the last time I'm mentioning this author, but I kid you not, we have one more January. We have The Curse of the Mistwraith. Now, I only did book ones or standalones here, I will note too, because typically, if you don't like the first book, you're not going to continue reading the series, and then some ratings tend to go up for books and series as you go along. So I figured that we're assuming that usually, you know, the first book tends to be the lower rated. That's not necessarily 100% true, but that's what we're doing here to make it easy. Curse of the Mistwraith, though, is again, which, man, 378 seemed super low. I will say I had read some other Janie words, but not I hadn't read Hell's Chasm, and I hadn't read Wars of Light and Shadow. I read some of her earlier work before I started Wars of Light and Shadow, and I really enjoyed the first book. It is really beautifully written. There are a lot of really great things on it, but I was not 100% sold on the series. So this was like a above 4 for me, but then every other book in the series ended up being 5 stars for me. And in retrospect, this also was. This is one of those things that there's so much more going on than you can possibly realize when you're reading the first book. But it is, again, even knowing that myself, it took me a little bit to really like get in and understand what was going on. And once book 2 is where I really fell in love with the series, and it blew up. That, I think, again, is Janie Wirtz. She has a very singular style, and it's not going to work for everyone. Her books are, you know, her prose I find to be some of just the most beautiful, and it's not that it's like specifically like, you know, purple or over the top, but it's very intentional, but it is also very rich and robust, and it's a style with like a lot of archaic words and a lot of very specific descriptions, and it's just one of those things I think is ultimately it either works for you or it doesn't. And I've had plenty of people that just did not care for the style, didn't click for them, and I think that's partially what you're getting here is if you're starting a book and you know it's the first of a very big series and it's just really not clicking, you can feel like, it almost makes it worse. Because if it's just one book, maybe, but then you're like, this is the start to a series that's really not working for me. So I think that's part of it. I feel like people are fairly familiar with Wars of Light and Shadow by this point as well here too, but it is at the very simple way of doing it. It's following two half brothers, but specifically Arathon, who is kind of the opposite of these, you know, prototypical hero, and their journey as they are taken to the land through a gate that where they're both supposed to end up being royals, and both of them though have the powers of Arathon with Shadow Mastery, and Lysair, the other half brother of Light, and together they're supposed to be able to stop the Mistwraith, but a lot of other stuff ensues, and that is like a super like tiny description of what's happening, but it's just an amazing series. It's something I absolutely love. It overtook my number one series of all time, which I didn't know was ever going to happen, and so I feel like you've probably all heard me talk plenty about the series. So yeah, ratings I think go up for the series as well once you continue, but it just still feels so criminal having it so low here on this list. We're only halfway through though, so we now go to 3.67 average review, which I think also, based on comments I got in the other video, I think will surprise people. We have Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham. This is the first book in Kithamar, and this was, again, when it came out, it was pretty popular. I remember hearing a lot of people talk about this. So this was seeing the low number of overall reviews this had, as well as the low average rating, is definitely a bit surprising, because this one had I think a little under 4,000 reviews on it too, but it felt like, at least in the booktube sphere, it felt like it was kind of everywhere. I think partially is a lot of people were probably checking it out because it was the new thing from, they were really hitting it, you know, one half of the team that wrote The Expanse, and this is nothing like that at all. So I think you probably had a lot of people that were checking it out because of that reason and not realizing fully what they're going to get. It is also, though, it is a very unique thing, and Daniel Abraham is an author who has unique ideas. And like Long Price Quartet, which I think was a very unknown and underappreciated series for a long time before really blowing up, and myself and many others on booktube ended up picking it up. It ended up being something we loved and a favorite. This, though, with the new series, though, it's still, it maybe takes some time to get on, but I feel like most people who read it that I remember hearing about really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it as well. This, though, is it's this it Kithamar is sort of a living city, which is an interesting idea. But the series is going to be following the same sort of time period, but different characters. And we're following a thief here, and after her brother dies, and she is kind of trying to deal with that, and it's about how she deals with grief, but also she ends up finding out more things and getting involved in things bigger than her that are involving the city and the politics and these huge, far-ranging consequences. So it was a really interesting and unique novel, but one that it might just, maybe the concept isn't going to fully work for everyone, or people have the wrong expectations. But it's, again, I've been talking about it multiple times. I really need to just read book two, because I just for some reason never gotten to it. But it's definitely a good one and worth checking out as well. Next up, then, we have another one. We're going down to 3.65. And this is another one that was on the low number of reviews, but that is Electric Forest by Tanith Lee. This one, it does feel criminal having it be so low, but also I do feel like I kind of understand why. This is Tanith Lee. Her writing style and her prose is very beautiful, the way that she writes. But it's definitely, this was more of an ideas based thing, and so I think people who need characters were probably going to have a harder time latching onto this because of the way that it's written. If you're someone who loves beautiful prose, though, it's really great for that. But the ideas too are unique and interesting, and specifically too, I'll mention that just recently Joanna did a video talking about hidden gems and mentioned this too, and did a much better job explaining this book and probably all the other ones. So I'll link her video down below. Definitely check that one out because that was great. Uh, but it is following a character who is sometimes just called ugly, and she, though, was born biologically, and so is like deformed, and is not beautiful like everyone else in the world who's created more artificially, and is kind of dealing with that, but then also is recruited into a big scheme because there's a way that could all change for her. And it goes into some really surprising directions. And this one is a very, I think, controversial ending, where it's just, it either really works or really doesn't for people. And again, I think those controversial ending ones can just it can make or break books for people. So I imagine most of the negative reviews on this one, in fact, I know I've looked at some of them before, are just like, oh, I didn't like the ending. So one of those things, where when you're writing really bold things that do bold endings, sometimes you're gonna have that happen. But I understand it. But man, I loved that book. It was so good, and it started me just really needing to get more Tanith Lee. So it was a fantastic time. Next up, then, at 3.57, we are going to be talking again about Kate Elliott with Servant Mage, which this is a novella, and this is epic fantasy, although this is definitely a little bit different. And I was really surprised to see that this was so low on here, just because I think I'm not sure exactly how many people read this one. I don't remember the number of reviews on this one, but I read this. I think I did an e-arc of it, and I ended up really enjoying it. And it's definitely, I prefer when Elliot has more time, because of the fact that she does such fantastic world building and writing like types of things. But I remember hearing her novellas being fairly well received. So this one does kind of surprise me. I think the partially is like my main complaint here, which I still quite enjoyed this book, but my main complaint was, hey, I wish this was like 300 pages longer so we could dig into the world more. So I think partially that's just, at least for me, whenever I see short work that is just not rated as well, I question that a little bit less, just because I sometimes struggle with shorter works where I just don't feel like there's enough time to get in there. And so, like, I know that was really my complaint here, but it's just doing the Elliot thing with really interesting world, interesting magic, going in different directions, really character focused, and so I still think it was very much worth a read. I think the Keeper 6 was her more popular one, I think, and that one was more sci-fi. Although I liked this one a little bit more, to be honest. So I think although they're very different, because Keeper 6 had, I guess, sci fantasy maybe, but it was quite different than this one. This is more your like kind of classical style of fantasy here, but it's just yeah, I thought it was really good. So definitely seeing it so low was a little bit surprising for me. Now, next up, and this is we're down to, we only have two left, and this one above maybe all others did not surprise me, but it's just kind of funny seeing it here because of the very hit or miss one. But at an average rating of 3.53 on Goodreads, we have The Magicians by Lev Grossman, and I kind of get this one. Like I said, I thought I would hate this book and thought I would hate this series, and I ended up really loving it and just having a really great time with it. Grossman, I think, is a really phenomenal author. There are some hiccups and some things in the series that definitely could have been better, but the main thing here is you were following a character who is not very likable. He's kind of an ass, and he's miserable, and you're just in his head following him doing his miserable self-pitying kind of thing. And it is hard, I think, especially for those character readers. And also, I feel like beyond that too, the series has this reputation, and I guess I didn't feel like it was earned. I don't know if there were more reasons for this, but it has this reputation of being like the series that more literary fiction readers are like, it's the only fantasy they're okay with because it thinks it's better than fantasy or something. And I didn't get that at all. I feel like you can absolutely tell the love of fantasy that Grossman has because of the way this is written. It is very sarcastic and a biting take and a send up of lots of different types of fantasy and some specific series. But it feels like there's such an appreciation for what makes fantasy great here as well that I didn't really feel that. But this is, again, I expected to hate this. I ended up very surprisingly enjoying it. But I got reading the reviews for the Magician's books is hilarious because I read so many of the negative reviews for books 1 and 2, and I'm just like, you're not wrong. Like all the stuff you're complaining about is not wrong, but I really enjoyed it and loved it anyway. So it's one of those ones where it makes sense, and I had a great time with it. It is. I talked quite a lot about it. I have a video really talking about my take on the first book and my take on the series as well, which I think a lot more people would appreciate than maybe realize. But it's definitely, if you're the somewhat jaded fantasy fan as an adult, who still wishes you would have maybe gotten your letter or gone through the portal or something, like this is coming from that kind of angle and exploring that, and does a really great job of it. And finally, we have the one that I think actually, I believe this was the number one for both, with only coming in at 327 ratings. Yeah, this was the lowest number rated and the lowest average score, I think partially tied to that. In the Eye of Heaven by David Keck at 3.29, which is quite low. Like that is a big drop even from The Magicians. And this is one too where I feel like not that many people checked it out. And so this thing, when you only have the 300 some ratings, there's it's a lot easier for your rating to be higher if you have a ton of ratings, and there's going to be some higher ones mixed in there. This is a series though that I talked about is I remembered it fondly, and then rereading it, I actually appreciate it even more. This is a debut. This is the only series this author's ever written, and it did not do particularly well, obviously, since it's included at the bottom of both of these videos here. It didn't get a lot of traction, it didn't get read a lot, it didn't get the best reviews, but it's a debut. There are some weird things, and there's some things that could have been better in this book, but man, what Keck does, he does so well. This is just, if you like, again, this is sort of the gritty medieval type of fantasy, which has a lot of realism in the medieval type of world, and our characters don't have magic. They're not really dealing with that, but the lore and the world building is just phenomenal here. It's not only do we have just this the land that in has weight, it has age, it has history, but the people, the events, there's just so much of this stuff, and it's woven in really, really beautifully. It's just I've not read anything else quite like this that handles the lore in this way, where it is just every aspect of the world feels like it's dripping. The only thing, as I'm saying this, that kind of comes to mind, although stylistically extremely different, but in Malazan Book of the Fallen, it's much, much more expansive, but there's all of this history, there's all these things happening. We're really taking the time to explore that because that's a much, much longer series, and here we're not. We're just kind of seeing it as we go along, but just the richness that brings, and being such a world building focused reader, absolutely loved it. It's just, there's so many great things the books do. I enjoyed them even more on reread, and I just cannot recommend checking them out enough. It's got some the medieval thing. It's the main character Durand, what's happening there is from a very small kind of landholding baron is his father from the call, and he is getting ready to inherit this one tiny bit of land from one of his vassals because that person's son disappeared many years ago, and that's all his father even has for him to take on as not being the first son. And then that son, the missing son, ends up showing up, and then he has nothing. And so he ends up going off on his own, becoming a knight errant, and just trying to make a name for himself. And ends up in a couple of different retinues fighting in tourneys, and ends up in much bigger things that at first it seems like we're just dealing with the tournaments and his own turmoil, but we start to see bigger elements for the kingdom and for in fact possibly the world. And it raises the stakes while also staying grounded and has the depth of lore that you just don't get in a lot of fantasy. It's just phenomenal. So highly recommend checking it out. Again, it's one I've talked about a lot, but it's so good, and I really wish more people would check it out. There you have it, though. Those are the 10, at least for me, as some of the most egregiously underrated in overall like average rating on Goodreads. All books that I love that I recommend checking out. Let me know. I'd be curious if you've got some books that you love that are in a similar space. That's where I feel like, at least for me, when I look up books, I don't always pay that much attention to the average rating. Like if I see it's quite low, I'm like, maybe I need to look into this a little bit more. But I have, as I always say, I have picked up so many books that I've ended up loving from negative reviews. When I see negative reviews and they're just complaining about all the things that I love in my books, and I pick the book up immediately and end up loving it. So it's you can always take, I think, reviews with a grain of salt, and that's where here's my take on all of these books, which are of varying ratings, but all not doing the best on Goodreads that I think are definitely worth a look. So that's it for this one. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether any of these books, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.